She whispered, "My mama never came back." And the rancher rode into the blizzard to find her. Before we begin, comment your country so I know where the story is reaching. The storm rolled over Wyoming territory like a living thing. Snow ate the road and blurred the low hills. Wind clawed at the ranch houses scattered across the plain, testing doors and shutters. On the last place before the country turned to nothing but drifts and rock, Abram Cole sat alone at his table. The lamp threw a small circle of light over a ledger and a chipped mug. Outside, the night howled. Inside, the only sound was the tick of a clock and the scrape of a spoon in the bottom of a stew bowl. He was used to nights like this. He was not used to knocking. 3 small taps broke through the wind. He stopped listening. Then the sound came again. 3 knocks. Hesitation. 3 more, a little quicker. No one sensible was out in this weather. Abram rose and crossed the door. His hand brushed the rifle on its pegs, then fell away. He lifted the latch and pulled. Cold slammed into him. Snow spiraled in the doorway. And there, half buried in the drift on his porch, stood a little girl. She was maybe 4, 5 at most. A thin shawl was wrapped around her shoulders, soaked and stiff. Her dress ended above boots that had split along the seams. Bare skin showed in the cracks. Her hair, dark and curly, clung in frozen loops to her cheeks. She tipped her head back to look up at him. Her lips moved, but her teeth were chattering hard enough to shake her words apart. Abram stepped out, blocking the wind with his body. "Easy," he said. "You lost." She pulled in a breath that sounded too loud in her small chest. "Sir," she whispered, "my mama never came back." Her knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the boards, lifting her as if she weighed no more than a bedroll. The smell of wet wool and cold skin dragged him backward to another winter. He forced a memory down. "Not this time," he muttered. He kicked the door shut. The wind dropped to a dull roar. The house felt suddenly close and warm with the small weight in his arms. Abram carried the girl to the hearth. The fire was more ember than flame. He fed it, kindling, until heat began to spill back into the room. He set her on a braided rug and knelt. Her boots were little more than leather wrapped around her feet. He peeled them away, then stripped off stockings stiff with ice. Her toes were white and red with cold. He rubbed them with a dry cloth and wrapped them in a folded blanket. Her rag doll had fallen from her hand. He tucked it against her chest. Her fingers found on their own, clinging. For a while he watched her breathe. At last her lashes fluttered. She squinted at the fire, then at him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she said, voice small and hoarse. "Mama calls me Lena Bean when she's happy." "Where's home, Lena?" "By the creek outside town," she answered. "A little house with a crooked step. Mama goes into washclothes for people. She left yesterday. Said snow was light and she'd be back before dark. Told me to keep the stove fed and stay inside." Her eyes filled, but she kept talking. I watched the road till I couldn't see it. The dark came. The stove went out. She never knocked. Mama doesn't break promises. Lena swallowed. If she didn't come home, it means she can't. So I came to the house with a big tree. Mama said the man here helps folks. On the hill behind the ranch, a cottonwood tree spread its bare branches over a single white cross. "Your mama works at the laundry?" he asked. Lena nodded. "She scrubs all day," she said. Her hands cracked. "She always smiles when she comes through the door. She said if trouble ever came, I was to go to you." The storm was bad, worse in the low hills between his place and town. He could wait till morning, when the snow might ease. He could tell the sheriff then, let men with fresher horses search the frozen ground. But a child had walked miles to reach him. If Lena had made it this far through the drifts, what were the chances a grown woman, burdened and alone, was safe? He moved the stove, filled a tin bowl with stew, and cooled it. "Eat," he said, setting it in her hands. "Slow. You're staying here till I get back. There's extra wood by the hearth. Keep the fire going, you hear?" She stared at the food as if she wasn't sure it was real. Then she took a small bite. Color crept back into her face. "You're going to find her?" Lena asked. "I'm going to try," he replied. "Tonight?" "Storm won't get kinder if I wait," he said. She looked toward the window, where snow smeared the glass into a white blur. "You'll come back?" she whispered. He met her eyes. "I will," Abram said. "If your mama is alive out there, I'll bring her home. If she's not, I'll come back and tell you what I found." She studied him with a seriousness far too old for her small face. Then she nodded. "I'll talk to the fire," she said. "Mama says fires die if you ignore them." "Then don't ignore it," he replied. "And don't open this door to anybody but me." He pulled on his heavy coat and hat, took a lantern and a coil of rope from the wall, and checked the buckle on the old revolver at his hip out of habit. "Sir," Lena said softly, "thank you for opening." "You knocked," he said. "Seemed only fair." He lifted the latch. The storm roared back into the room, then swallowed him as he stepped out. Behind him, a small girl sat by a stubborn fire, holding a rag doll and a bowl of stew, believing in a man she had met only minutes ago. Ahead of him, somewhere between his porch and town, a woman who kept her promises had disappeared. Abram Cole set his face into the wind and started down the invisible road, not yet knowing how much this night would change when the snow finally melted. Abram kept his head down and his lantern low. The wind tried to snatch the flame with every gust, but the glass chimney held. The light pushed only a few paces into the white swirl. Beyond that, the world vanished. The road to town ran along a shallow rise, then dipped toward the creek where Lena said they lived. In summer it was dust and ruts. Tonight, it was just a darker line of snow. He walked in the old wheel tracks by memory more than sight. Each step sank to his calves. The cold chewed at his cheeks and eyes. He had buried a wife in winter. That memory walked beside him, no matter how many years he stacked on top of it. Maybe that was why he had never left this hard piece of land. Maybe that was why he had nailed that white cross into the hill with his own hands and never moved it. "Another woman isn't dying out here if I can help it," he said into the wind. It carried his words away. He reached the first stand of low pines and paused, turning slowly, lantern held out. The snow had already begun to smooth over the tracks of the day, but not completely. Faint lines crossed a road where feet and hooves had passed when the storm was still light. He knelt. One set of boot prints, small but grown, a woman's most likely, steps close together, as if the person was carrying a load. The trail angled from town toward the creek, just as Lena had said. Beside them, deeper holes where a small sled had been dragged. The grooves wandered, then straightened as if the person had fought the wind and regained balance. He followed. The pines thinned. The land dropped. He saw the creek by the darker cut in the snow and the glint of sluggish water, where the ice had not fully closed. A narrow plank bridge crossed it. The sled tracks led straight there. So did a second set of prints. Larger. A man's. They came from a different direction, out of the low brush on the far side. The two trails met at the bridge. Abram's jaw tightened. The snow around the planks told the rest. Scuff marks. A broken rail. The sled lying tipped on its side against the bank, half buried. One small sack beside it, split open, flour blown across the snow like another kind of drift. He lifted the lantern higher, searching. On the downstream side, the snow was churning a rough oval and then dragged. A long, shallow furrow ran away from the creek, as if someone had been pulled by arms or coat. He followed the disturbed snow. The wind moaned through the bare branches overhead. A dark shape lay against a low rise where rocks poked through the drifts. At first he thought it was a fallen log. Then the lantern light caught a piece of blue cloth. He quickened his pace, stumbling once, righted himself, and reached the still figure. It was a woman. She lay on her side, one arm twisted under her, hair frozen to her cheek. The blue cloth was a plain work dress, crusted with ice. Snow clung to her lashes. Her lips were cracked and pale. "Mistress?" Abram said roughly. "Can you hear me?" No answer. He set the lantern down, brushed snow from her face, and pressed his fingers to the hollow below her jaw. "There. Faint, thin, but there." "Good," he breathed. "You're allowed to be stubborn." He checked her arms and legs by touch, as gently as he could. No obvious breaks. Her skin felt like cold stone. He shrugged off his outer coat and wrapped it around her, pulling her close long enough for his own body heat to seep through the layers. Then he looped the rope under her shoulders. The horse would never make it across that narrow bridge with an unconscious rider slung over. His ranch was closer than town now. If he cut across the flats instead of following the road back. "I'm taking you to Lena," he said, whether she heard him or not. He hauled, muscles burning, until he had dragged her back to the road. Then he gave a sharp whistle. For a moment the storm swallowed the sound. Then a dark shape emerged from the white, head lowered against the wind. His big bay gelding, Duke, snorted and shook snow from his mane. "Easy, old fellow," Abram murmured. "One more job tonight." He tied the rope to the saddle horn and levered the woman up across the horse's withers, arranging her as carefully as he could. Her hand flopped, then settled. "Hold on if you can," he said. "Your girl is waiting." He mounted behind, hooking an arm around the limp form to keep her from slipping, and turned Duke toward the open country. The road to his ranch from here was no more than a guess in this weather. But he knew the lay of the land like his own hands. A line of low hills there, a rock outcrop there, the faint dark smudge of his cottonwood. When you got close enough, the wind battered them. Twice the horse stumbled in unseen drifts. Abram talked to him under his breath. The kind of slow, steady words that had nothing to do with sense and everything to do with keeping man, an animal, moving. Minutes or hours passed. Time lost its edges in the white. At last, through the blur, he saw it, a darker shape against the storm. The cottonwood on the hill, arms lifted bare to the sky. Relief hit him hard. The ranch house would be just beyond. As they crested the last rise, a small square of orange light appeared ahead. Window glow. His window. For a moment, Abram only stared. Someone had kept the fire alive. He nudged Duke forward. The horse broke into a slow, weary trot, hooves thudding against the packed snow near the house. The door flew open before he reached it. Lena stood there, wrapped in a blanket too big for her, hair a wild dark halo. The firelight behind her framed her small shape. She took one look at the bundle draped across the horse and let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "Mama?" Abram swung down stiffly. "Inside first," he said. "Help me clear a space." He lifted the woman, careful as if she were made of glass, and carried her into the warmth. The air inside the cabin was thick with the smell of wood smoke and stew. Lena ran ahead, dragging a chair out of the way, pulling extra blankets from the bed. They laid the woman on Abram's own bunk. Lena clutched her mother's hand. "Mama, it's me," she whispered. "I did what you said. I went to the man with the big tree. He brought you home." The woman's eyelids fluttered once, then stilled. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Abram stood at the foot of the bed, snow still melting on his coat, lantern still in his hand. He had brought her back from the drifts. Now came the part he feared more. Waited to see whether the night would give her up completely, or take her anyway. Abram set the lantern on the table and knelt beside the bunk. The woman's breaths were thin, too fast, each one catching as if her ribs argued with the effort. Her face was ghost pale, except for the scatter of bruises across her cheekbone. Snow melt darkened the blankets beneath her. Lena hovered close, her small hand never leaving her mother's. Every few seconds she looked up at Abram, as if checking whether he still believed she hadn't made a mistake coming here. He did. "You did right," he said quietly. She nodded once, her chin trembling. Abram heated water, brewed a mild herbal tea, and soaked a cloth to warm her hands and feet. He worked slowly, steady, keeping the warmth moving back into her limbs. He had seen frostbite before. He had buried men for less cold than this. But she still responded. Slight twitch of finger, a soft breath that deepened for a moment before wavering again. "She's fighting," Abram said. "Will she wake up?" Lena whispered. "I think so," he answered, because he refused to say anything else. "She's stronger than she looks." Lena lowered her head over her mother's hand, whispering words too quiet for him to hear. A prayer, maybe, or a promise. Abram reached for his old wool coat and draped it around both of them. The fire hummed in the hearth. The house was warm enough now that the cold no longer gnawed at the corners of the room. But the storm outside had not calmed. Wind pressed along the walls. Snow skittered across the roof. It sounded like a dozen hands scraping to get in. Abram listened, thoughtful. Someone had grabbed her. He was sure of it now. That drag mark in the snow. Those larger boot prints crossing hers at the bridge. No wolf or wandering drunk carried off a woman like that. Someone who knew her path had waited. He didn't say this aloud. "Not yet, sir," Lena said, watching him carefully. He turned from the window. "Yes. You look like you know something bad." He paused. Kids notice things adults missed. He wouldn't feed her lies, but he wouldn't hand her fear either. "I think your mama ran into trouble," he said plainly. "Trouble she didn't ask for, but she's breathing. That means she's not done fighting. And I'm here now." Lena nodded again, as if filing that answer deep inside her. Hours passed. Abram stoked the fire, checked the woman's pulse, fed Lena a little more stew, then returned to the bunk each time, as if pulled there by something in him that refused to leave her alone. Just before dawn, the woman stirred more strongly. Her brow tightened. Her hand twitched under the blankets. Her lips parted, shaping a sound that was hardly more than breath. Lena sat up straight. "Mama?" The woman's voice was faint. "Lena?" Lena's whole body sagged in relief. She leaned close, touching her forehead to her mother's arm. "I'm here," she whispered. "Don't go anywhere." The woman blinked slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim light of the cabin. Her gaze flicked to the rafters, the hearth, the table, then to Abram, still kneeling beside her. "You're safe," he said. "You're in my home. Your daughter came through the storm to get help." Her lips trembled. She tried to sit up, but failed. Abram steadied her with a hand behind her shoulders. "You carried me?" she asked. "I found you near the creek." She closed her eyes briefly, the memory passing through her like a shadow. "There was a man," she said. "I heard steps behind me on the bridge. I turned and—" Her breath shook. "I don't remember the rest." "You don't need to rush it," Abram said. "We'll talk more when you're stronger." But the woman wasn't done. "He said my name," she whispered. "Not the one I use in town. My real one." Abram felt his jaw lock into place. She saw the change in his face and looked away, ashamed. "I left someone years ago," she said. "Someone who doesn't let go." Lena's arms tightened around her. "Mama, he won't find us here, right?" Abram answered before the woman could. "No one's touching either of you under my roof." She looked at him, long enough that the fear in her eyes softened a little, as if she needed a stranger's certainty more than her own wavering hope. Her gaze drifted to the window, where gray light began to seep through the frost. "Why would you help us?" she asked quietly. "Because your daughter knocked," Abram said, simple and direct. "That's enough." She let out a shaky breath, one that wasn't quite a laugh, but wasn't sorrow either. "Thank you," she murmured. "What do I call you?" he asked. She hesitated only a moment. "Mari," she said. "Just Mari." He nodded. "All right, Mari. Rest now." She settled back. Lena curled beside her, holding her mother's blanket in both fists, as if this were the first safe place she'd known in days. Abram stood and looked around the room. Everything was different now. He felt it in the quiet, in the firelight, in the simple fact that two strangers had come into his life and somehow made the house feel less empty. But the trouble that had chased Mari onto that bridge was not finished. He lit another lamp and set it by the window. He needed the light. He also needed a plan for whoever might come looking next. If you're still here, make sure to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories like this. Morning brought a cold quiet that felt sharper than the storm itself. Abram stepped outside to check the sky. Snow still blanketed everything, but the wind had died. Low clouds drifted east, leaving a pale strip of light above the ridge. It wasn't a peaceful morning. It was the kind the land held its breath for. He fed Duke, inspected the yard, and scanned the tree line. No fresh tracks except the rabbit prints near the barn. Still, he knew better than to relax. Whoever had grabbed Mari had not come for robbery or chance. A man with a reason always returned. When he stepped back inside, Lena was awake and feeding her mother spoonfuls of warm broth. Mari still looked drained, but her eyes held more clarity than the night before. Abram set his gloves by the fire. "How's the pain?" he asked. "Everywhere," Mari said plainly. "But I'm here." She brushed a hand across Lena's hair. She kept the fire alive all night. Lena lifted her chin, proud. Abram nodded. "She saved you." Mari's eyes glistened. "I know." She sipped more broth before asking, "What happens now?" "I can't take her back to that little house." "He'll come." "You're not going back there," Abram said. "Not until we know who we're dealing with." Mari's fingers tightened around the mug. She seemed to steady herself before speaking. "His name is Bram Keller," she said. "I left him 3 years ago. He worked a rail cruise. Came home mean. Came home drunk. Came home looking for someone to blame." Lena pressed close, as if trying to protect her mother from old stories. "I took what I could," Mari whispered. "A few coins, clothes for Lena, and I left before dawn. He said if he ever found us again, he'd take Lena and bury the rest of the past." Abram listened without moving. "He's tracked you across half the country?" he asked. "Yes, but slowly. He's not a man of patience. He's a man of grudge." Abram let out a slow breath. Everything fit now, the drag marks, the torn cloth, the bruises on her face. The man who had ambushed her wasn't random. He had been following. "Then he knows you're close," Abram said, "and he knows these woods. If he didn't finish what he started, he'll try again." Lena swallowed hard. "He won't come here, right?" Mari looked at Abram, not trusting her own answer. Abram crouched to level with Lena. "He might," Abram said, steady and honest. "But if he does, he'll wish he hadn't." Lena's jaw set in a determined way that reminded him of her mother. All day, Abram prepared. He repaired the latch on the back door. He moved his spare horse in the barn to keep it from being spooked by noises. He chopped wood until his breath turned to steam and sweat chilled on his back. He left lanterns ready, one near the window, one by the stove, one at the bedside. Inside, Mari watched him with a mix of gratitude and unease. She wasn't used to anyone standing between her and danger. By late afternoon, her strength returned enough for her to sit up without help. The color in her cheeks improved. Lena sat beside her, tracing little circles on her mother's wrist. Abram brought them both warm cider. Mari held a cup and said, "You're doing too much." "No," he said simply. "I'm doing what's right." She looked down at the cup, swallowing words she didn't know how to give voice to. For a woman who had run for so long, trusting someone felt strange. As dusk settled, Abram checked the sky once more. Clear, too clear. A man could cross miles unseen on a night like this. Mari must have sensed his tension. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You didn't ask for this." "No one asked for storms," he replied. "They still come." Lena yawned and crawled onto Abram's old armchair with her doll, drifting to sleep within minutes. Mari lay back against the pillows, fatigue weighing her down again. Inside the quiet, Abram kept watch. The first sign came shortly before midnight. A faint shift of snow outside, a soft creak of the porch boards, then a shadow across the frosted window, slow, heavy, searching. Mari's breath caught. Abram rose without sound and moved Lena to Mari's side. He tightened his coat, checked the revolver at his hip, and stepped behind the door. A knock followed. Hard, deliberate. "Mari," a voice called. "Open up." She froze, knuckles white in the blanket. The man's voice slid through the cracks of the wood like oil. "You think you can hide behind a stranger's walls? You think he'll stop me?" Abram stepped outside. The door closed behind him with a thud. The night was still, too still. Moonlight washed across the snow, revealing a heavy-set man with a thick coat and a crooked sneer. His beard was unkempt. His breath fogged the air. "You Keller?" Abram asked. The man smirked. "Who's asking?" Abram didn't bother with speeches. "You're not taking her. Or the girl." Keller spat in the snow. "She's mine." "No," Abram said. "She left. That's the end of it." Keller's eyes glinted with something unhinged. "You think she loves you," he hissed. "She ran from me. She'll run from you, too." Abram didn't flinch. "I'm not asking her for anything." Keller stepped forward, but his bravado faltered when Abram didn't back away. Abram had seen storms that looked friendlier than this man, and he knew how to stand his ground. "Turn around," Abram said. "Walk away. You won't get another chance." Keller hesitated. Then he did something unexpected. He looked toward the window. The faint silhouette of Lena holding her mother's hand was visible through the frost. Something in Keller's face cracked, rage mixed with desperation. He moved. Abram was faster. Within seconds, Keller was in the snow, wrists bound to the hitching post with the rope Abram always kept on his porch. Keller thrashed, but it didn't matter. Strength didn't help a man who'd already lost. "I'll have the sheriff come for him at first light," Abram said to Mari once he stepped back inside. "He won't trouble you again." Mari stared at him, breath trembling. The relief hit her so hard she had to sit. Lena crawled into her lap, clinging tight. "It's done," Abram said. Those words landed gently, the way the first warm day of spring lands after a punishing winter. In the days that followed, Mari regained her strength. Lena laughed more than she had in months. The cabin felt lived in for first time in years. 3 bowls on the table, soft voices at night, a child's drawing pinned to the wall. One morning, Mari stepped outside to where Abram was repairing the fence. She handed him a folded cloth. "A handkerchief," she said. "I made it, as thanks." He unfolded it. Her stitching was uneven, but careful. A small flower in one corner, and under it a single word, hope. Abram looked at her, really looked. She met his eyes without fear for the first time. "Stay here," he said quietly. Both of you, as long as you need. Longer if you want. Mari didn't answer right away. Then she nodded, not because she was trapped, but because she chose to. Spring would come soon. Snow would melt. New grass would push through the thaw. And 3 people who had been wandering through their own storms would learn what it felt like to belong again, not by blood, not by promise, but by heart.